Before we get started, I want to thank our community partner, Epilepsy Foundation of America, and sponsors Neurelis and SK Life Science. Thank you so much for believing in this podcast, for making conversations like this possible, and giving us a space to talk about our epilepsy what the F moments. Okay, here we go. Hey guys, welcome to What the F. So today's guest is going to talk about something that really hasn't been covered on the podcast and something I know I am super curious about, and it's being a father with epilepsy and with seizures and like what that looks like. And it's just something I'm super excited to dive into. Today we have JP Severin. He is the brand manager for Kellogg's, which means he gets to have lots of frosted mini wheats and tons of pictures of Tony the Tiger, which I am not jealous of at all. JP, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, happy to be here. Happy to be here, and good to connect. Good to be chatting with everyone.
So I kind of want to like just dive right in. And I remember you saying that your epilepsy, you were diagnosed at 18, which is
Yep.
like a hell of a way to start off adulthood. So what did that look like when you were like first diagnosed?
It was an interesting experience because it's sort of the tail end of high school. I had some long kind of virus that we think kind of triggered the seizure. So it was like hand, foot, and mouth, and it had been going on for a month or so. And we think it like kind of lowered the seizure threshold.
Mm.
So I had my first seizure at 18, and then two quick seizures kind of in that one incident. And that was pretty jarring, as like you can imagine.
I can't imagine, especially at
Yeah.
18. I
Yeah.
mean, like as if like what a time. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like it's a bit of a lightning strike. Like
Yeah.
you kind of have the experience of you're kind of happy-go-lucky youth, and then life hits very quickly. And so that was disorienting for me, and also like for my friends. They were just kind of confused, like what happened? You were in the hospital?
Right.
So
And you're like, I am just as confused as you are.
yeah, exactly. No one knows how to process it.
No.
So that was an interesting introduction to epilepsy, to say the least.
Yeah.
And but the fortunate thing was, after that I had a long stretch of good seizure control. So I was seizure free, I think, for, I don't know, it's been a while, probably 5 years, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, and
That's
so
huge.
yeah, it was great. It was great.
Yeah.
And I had some, I guess, difficulty dialing in medications, but once I did, it felt like, minimal side effects and all good. Since then, I've had, and we're not sure kind of what brought them back, but was having, after that kind of 5-year period, was having one seizure every 18 months to 2 years, so not very frequent at all, pretty well controlled. And since then, over the last, we'll call it 3 years, they've been accelerating. So one every 2 to 4 months.
That's rough.
That's tricky. So we're not going in the right direction, and the complication is that it's, and this kind of segues into kind of the topic that we want to talk about, is my kids are becoming more and more involved, and my family is becoming more and more involved. And so I'm a father of 5. And
you're a father of 5?
Yeah, yep.
Oh
Yep.
my gosh. How did I not know this going
Yeah,
in?
yeah, father of 5.
So
yep.
we really have an expert here.
Yes, and they all have
My
their
God.
different experiences with it. So
Yeah.
my daughter Zoe's 10. I have twin boys, Matthew and Henry, who are each 8. And then Luke is 4, just about to turn 5, and Joshua is just about to turn 2. So,
Wow.
yep.
Wow. So
It's a
okay,
full
so
house.
where it is a full house. I have so many questions. But first let's start with like, when did the kind of like frequency and intensity of these seizures start to increase where your kids were? Like how, like where, like did you have one of the five yet when this had happened? Or what was not that I'm trying to make a correlation. I hope no
Yeah.
one infers that. I'm just curious about your timeline.
I would say when the boys were 4 or 5, it
The
started to
twins, you
pick up
mean?
a little bit. Yep. Yep.
Okay. Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
I want to kind of dial back to just that, because I think this is something that doesn't get a ton of attention, is when, you have those stretches of not having seizures, and then one, pops up 5 years later or 18 months later or 2 years later. What is that sort of ground zero? Because that's what I don't know, maybe I'm projecting my own experience, but like, what does that feel like when it's like, fuck,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, like,
That captures it.
yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
think I think one of the things that I've struggled with is the illusion of progress, you know. And so it's you feel like it's receding, and yet it isn't. That can be discouraging.
yeah.
So I think that's one of the things that I've learned with epilepsy is, in order to, let's say, fight against that potential discouragement, you have to be resilient in the face of those unexpected resets.
Mm.
And then the fluidity, the kind of lightning strike type experience of
Yeah.
epilepsy, those are the two things that to me are like that. It's not just the illusion of progress, it's the fact that it kind of strikes like lightning.
Mhm.
And
So
those
it's,
two things can be just like very demoralizing.
yeah, well, I mean, I just want to point out, I love how you're like, you are addressing all of these things like in one conglomerate. It's like, it is demoralizing, but we need resilience, but we need, but like
Yeah.
accepting this illusion of progress. I've never thought about that before. In the sense where like, is that just like that progress is not that, God, I don't want to say progress is impossible, but like just because there is no cure, or or just like to accept and expect seizures, or what does that look like for you? I like want to know everything about this illusion of progress.
So here's what it is like it's an uncontrollable, it's an underlying condition that no matter how many things we do the right way, we
Mm,
cannot fully control or solve. That is just a tough reality. And then that, I would say, like, manifests in thinking that you're maybe making progress from a treatment perspective,
mm,
but you have this experience of like, I'm going kind of round in circles. Like, I'm
totally.
yep, yep,
It's almost like that concept of like insanity is doing the same thing over
yeah,
and over again and
yep.
expecting different results. But that's kind of like what epilepsy
Yeah, yeah,
is.
and it's also like, I mean, for sure, and but the positive side of that is that experience builds so many positive character traits, like resilience, empathy, humility, like broadens your perspective.
Totally.
Um, and so it's always an interesting thing where people, I don't know if you share this experience, but people talk about um, epilepsy and like disabilities more broadly as a default negative.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't experience it that way. And so then the the choice is, it's like, how do you, how choose your own adventure? Like, how how do you respond to that? How do you respond to that? Because like
Yeah.
you can go two different directions.
Yep.
And like you're never going to be perfect. You can go both of those directions at different times. But I think that's been one thing that has been positive for me, is like focusing on the the things that epilepsy produces that are unique and positive,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
as opposed to focusing on the things that are scary and uncertain limitations,
Right. And I appreciate how you're saying just where to focus, not
Yep.
ignore, but
Yes.
just put focus
Yes.
on,
Exactly.
it's kind of like directing your thoughts. And
Yes.
you can
Yep.
have the thoughts, about the scary stuff,
Yep.
but like
You have to.
right.
Yep.
In order to like kind of fully accept, what's going on. But I also like how you said, it's like you can do all the right things, quote unquote, right things, and it's uncontrollable.
Mhm.
I mean, just
Yep.
last week, I was like, I'm feeling like kind of seizure-y. I'm feeling, and then I literally rested all day. I was like, okay, we're just gonna rest.
Yeah.
And then I had a seizure
Yeah.
that night.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why we had to reschedule this recording.
Yes.
I was
Yes.
like,
Yes.
real sorry about that.
Yes.
But I just think like it's one of those things that's so I don't know. For me, I go through these cycles of like acceptance and
Yeah.
like of that that it is uncontrollable, but it's my responsibility to try and mitigate, but I still
Yes.
can't, it's
Yes.
just all of the complex sort of things that come with this condition.
Yeah. Your experience of the seizure feeling, what is that like? And then the second question is, in your experience of controlling the controllables, where have you seen success and where do you struggle the most, maybe?
Wow, we're flipping the interview.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, here we go.
I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I'm like, okay, gotta get here. So my seizures are I have temporal lobe epilepsy there, and they are the name keeps changing. It's partial complex or partial awareness or something. They start with a deja vu feeling, which for me is like trying to remember something that never happened, but it's always in the arts. It's very cool. It's like I'll try and remember like a book character, and that book character does not exist, but I'll be like, what book was it? Or was it a TV show? Or was it, or like it'll be song lyrics or something that is not there.
Interesting.
And I've even gone back and like Googled some of the things. I'm like, am I sure this isn't a book character? And it's not. And then, so my mind gets really fixated on that. And then I'll go like in and out of awareness they're on average like 7 minutes long. So which isn't long in life, but like to have a seizure for 7 minutes, like for me, it's not long, but for other people who have to watch it, I think it's pretty long.
Yeah.
But then my post-ictal state is like 4 days of severe
Oh, wow.
depression and like just cognitive dissonance and just fogginess. And then like but I feel it lifting each day.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it just flips and I'm like fine. And I was like, oh, was I depressed yesterday? Like I don't even remember it.
Yeah.
And as far as like mitigating, and trying to like quote unquote do the right thing, I have found that like for me it's like guarding my energy. It's like where am I going to put it?
Mhm.
And how much am I going to put out? And like because when I overextend my energy, that's generally when I have a seizure. So
Interesting.
and along with like the whole sleep and stress and like all those things combined.
Yep.
So for me it's like I really want to go out to dinner tonight with my friends, but I have worked all day and that would just for me be like poking a seizure.
Yes.
So that in my experience like seems to have kind of helped and worked, but then again, it's just like saying like I had the one last week where I was like I did everything right and my brain was like we don't fucking care. Right?
Yes.
We're just gonna do it anyway.
Yes. I share that experience where it's like I feel like I've ticked every box, and yet here we are.
Yep.
That's really interesting. The arts piece.
I know.
And the deja vu and kind of searching for characters. That I've never heard that before.
I just feel so lucky because it could be so much worse. Like it's always fun stuff. It's like plays, like literally, like I had so many weird things trying to remember and it's all pleasant. So I'm like, I just feel very fortunate about that and that it's creative.
Yes.
What about you? What do your seizures look like?
That has been one. That's a really interesting thing because my sense is it's not a well understood condition at all.
No.
And
Thank you
my
for saying
sense
that.
is there's something really interesting in the brain that seems to have like a creative linkage. Like
Mm.
when I talk to people who have epilepsy, it's like the brain moves in a slightly different way, and it's almost like a consciousness type of experience. So for me, I feel like so one interesting thing is a lot of my seizures happen, call it 80%, 90% happen when I'm exercising. So I have
Mm.
like a background as an endurance sports nut and did triathlons for
That's
15
awesome.
years.
Wow.
It was good until it started to provoke seizures
Oh my
and
God.
or seemingly.
Right.
And so my experience a lot of the time is while I'm riding my bike and I start to get this kind of like haziness where like it's almost like your consciousness is separating from your body. So I'll start to
Mm.
feel that like almost like looking down on myself. It's almost like if my body and my consciousness are just like they become blurred. They're like double.
Wow.
That's an interesting experience,
Yeah, I
and then
bet.
and that time frame is not long, and then I'll have a seizure, go dark, wake up, and putting the pieces back together of my brain is like the record will skip until I get a nap, and then
Mm.
once I wake up from the nap, then it's just kind of the muscular soreness, but
Sure.
my lucidity is maybe 90% of the way back, and I'll
Okay.
have some like word finding difficulty and be a little bit more like sluggish, but
Mm-hmm.
it comes back probably within 24 48 hours. And
Wow.
then yeah, the emotional, piece of it is depending on the circumstances of the seizure can take longer, you
What do
know.
you mean by that?
Well, some of them I feel like are less disruptive. Um, for me, it's like if it doesn't involve a hospital visit, most of the time, it's better.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like
And
that's a fair
yeah,
barometer,
yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. So like, yeah. So if they involve a hospital visit, then they're more expensive, and sometimes you get sedatives, which are like just not fun.
Nope.
And so recovering from the sedatives is a lot of the time is worse than recovering from the seizure.
Mm.
Um,
Wow, I never even thought about that part. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah. And so okay, so I you ride your bike with seizures. What does that
yes,
feel like? That is something I still have not gotten the courage to do
yeah,
alone. Like
yeah,
I'll go with someone else, but like I just went for a run yesterday and I was out there like, "Oh my God, I can't believe I'm
yeah,
out here alone. This is so amazing but
yeah,
terrifying."
yes.
And that's just me and my feet moving,
Hmm.
What does it feel like? And I'm not I hope this doesn't come off as judgment. This comes off as
No, it's
admiration
fine.
because I just don't have that courage to like literally hop back on the bike.
Yeah, yeah. It's well, what I've found is in Michigan, so when you have a seizure in Michigan, you're 6 months off driving.
Same
And
with Illinois.
one of the things that's a particular challenge with a family of five is that my wife Caitlin has to load up the kids in the car to do any sort of like me travel. So like
Yeah.
my transportation independence, it's pretty valuable.
Mhm.
And so biking, because we've set up our life that like most of it can happen in town, biking is such a valuable thing because it means that my wife doesn't have to load up the kids, which is a huge ordeal
I bet.
every time I want to go anywhere.
Yeah.
So that's like that's part of the reason that it's like been such an integral part of our life,
Mm.
is because it's like the way to still travel legally.
Yeah, totally.
But it's like potentially provoking these seizures. Like that we haven't been able to like make the direct linkage, but it's
Sure.
now to the point where it's like, well, it's like 80 to 90% of these seizures are happening when I'm exercising. There's clearly something there.
God, that has to be so frustrating.
It's very frustrating. It's one of those things where it's like it's just not well understood. It's not well understood, and everyone has a very like individualized experience with
Yes.
what their seizures look like and what brings them about.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of, I mean, the brain is such a misunderstood and
hmm
not understood organ to begin with. But I think then adding to the fact that everyone's epilepsy is literally different, it
Yeah.
doesn't help get the answers, you know? Um, so do you remember when you talked to your kids about your epilepsy or your seizures? Or like what that conversation looked like?
I know the more profound experience was when they saw their first seizure. So
Yeah.
so I've had I'll take you through the ones where they were very intimately involved. The
Mm-hmm.
first one was I was playing frisbee with one of my wife's uncles, and we were in a park and the kids were playing, and then I went down. And so they were like, what's happening to dad? And so that was their kind of first introduction to what a seizure looks like.
Yeah.
Um, and the fact that it just kind of comes out of nowhere, it's just jarring for them. They're trying to like understand what's happening, and it's like I think for them, I know for them that it's frightening to see your parents out of control, you
Sure.
know, and vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly their dad, I think, is like there's kind of like a protective role that I'm supposed to play that is like called into question, we'll say, when they see me in when they see that kind of like
Mm-hmm.
pattern. So I think
Yeah.
that's been something that they've had to kind of wrap their heads around. Then the
Yeah.
second one was with my mother-in-law, sister-in-law, and we were at a cider mill and went over to like, throw some donut wrappers away and was just like, something is not feeling right.
Oh
And
no.
then down again. And so my mother-in-law's a nurse, which was great. So like very, very helpful. My mom is a nurse, my
Oh
mother-in-law is a
wow.
nurse, and
Oh.
my dad's an ER doctor. So I'm
Oh my
like
God.
yeah. So I've got the squad on my side, which is helpful. Um, but even so, it's like still, no one can. It's epilepsy. It's like
Right.
no one has a full handle on it. One of the worst ones was with my boys, and we were installing a patio and like doing some yard work, and um, I was kind of lifting these rocks and just felt like, oh, I'm getting a little shaky. And my
Oh.
father-in-law was there, and he was like, lay down. And so that was the one where they saw it. My boys,
Mm.
the 8-year-olds, saw it really close, where it was like I'm right there. They can see my face, and then the ambulance, like the experience with the ambulance loading me into the ambulance was like just kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And so that was another experience. And then maybe the most painful one for me was I was riding my bike and started to feel off and pulled off the road with an aura and called my wife and was just like, I think you need to come get me. I'm feeling off. She was like, okay, where are you? So I kind of like hazily described the location, but
Mm.
nothing concrete or like
Yeah.
you're really able to locate me. And this is when I'm doing bikes, like I'm doing bike rides that are kind of roving, and it's bigger distances that I'm covering.
Mm-hmm.
So um so I have routes and she knows those routes, but there are a variety of them and they're like further distances. So I kind of give her a 2-mile radius to go search in. Helpful.
Sorry, I'm only laughing because it's
Yeah.
like, good luck,
Yeah.
honey.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So we're on the phone and and it's on speakerphone in the car. So the kids are all in the car
Mm.
and I just cut out and I start having a seizure while I'm on the phone and they're saying, "Dad, Dad."
Oh.
And I'm non-responsive. And so they called 911 and the ambulance and they were searching around for me and they found me and it was fine. But that was like, I mean, these are memories that are permanent memories.
Mm-hmm.
It's like these are permanent traumas that the kids are absorbing.
Yeah,
And that is something as a parent you wish you could take away. It's
totally.
like it's so hard to see your kids experience that and to know that there's nothing that can be done about it,
Mm-hmm.
and to also know that you can't shield them from these types of experiences in life.
And that's kind of what, so that's why this question's been lingering since, you've been sharing these stories is like what parallel their experiences are to those that you were describing earlier about having epilepsy, when it's kind of like it broadens your
Hmm.
horizon and it opens up your landscape, even though, like you said, it is a trauma, whether you're having the seizure, whether you're watching someone have the seizure. But do you do you think that's possible? And I'm not trying to sugarcoat anything here and take away the fact that it's a trauma, but do you think it's possible that it also kind of like opens their view about
Yeah.
life? Like
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
like, if their dad, like, because we all like hit that point when we find where you figure out our parents are human,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
it's like this kind of got them. I'm speaking for your kids now. Got them there. But I'm just curious if like, and I apologize if this comes off as trying to find a silver lining in a really shitty situation, but it's just like I just wonder, and have they talked to you about it? I guess I
Yeah.
should be asking if, go to the source. What do they
Yeah.
say about it?
Yeah. So I think like one of the things, and I'm curious if you share this experience, is like I think in some ways it's easier for us to have the seizure than it is for our loved ones to watch the seizure and
Yes.
experience that helplessness and fear in the moment.
Yep. 100%.
And so I think like there's that where they
Mm-hmm.
have a real like visceral fear response that's tied to those memories. But then I do think like there's the positive side that I experience is for them as well, where it's like when you are faced with the reality that life is fragile, more fragile than it seems at first glance, then that is like that leads you to a place of valuing your experiences more and like and increases gratitude, and then increases like empathy. I'm confident that my kids will experience it that way,
Yeah.
but there will be fear that comes with it too, fear and uncertainty, and that's
Well, it's so
life.
annoying, right? That like the bad shit happens to create gratitude.
Hmm. Yeah,
It's like, can
yeah.
we just have it without the
Yes,
bad
like
shit?
why not just the good stuff, like eating candy and cake and
Right.
it's all fine, you
And then we
know?
have amazing
Yeah,
perspective.
yeah, 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 exactly, exactly. But that is one of the things that I think is remarkable about these types of experiences is it's like an accelerator on your perspective development. It's like, I don't know if you experience this, is like every time I have a seizure, maybe it's almost every time I'm afforded a unique insight. Like it's
Mm.
tied to an insight.
Give
And
me an example. I'm so curious. What do you mean by this?
okay, so one example would be the illusion of progress, and then the absence of your ability to fully control something that you want to control. So that's one basic one.
I love how you say it's basic. Dude, that's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
basic.
Well, it's like it's an important one. It's
It's
a really
very
important one.
important, but like it
And
is a high level concept that I
yeah,
love.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And then the other one was a really interesting framing shift. One of the things that I think is interesting about epilepsy is it's like a frame breaker for your perspective and your perspective of the people that are most intimately connected to you. And so
What does
one of
that
the
mean? Like a
things,
frame breaker?
the experience of a seizure is a frame breaker for your consciousness in general. It's like you have
Yeah.
a natural perception pattern and that is disrupted. And so the experience of your normal self is jarred into some other thing or some other mode of perceiving. Where that consciousness goes, I have no idea, but there's something happening there.
Yeah.
And what I have experienced is that it's dissolved my ego more than it would have otherwise. And then it's broadened my empathy for people who have direct shared experiences and indirect shared experiences, but similar.
Totally.
And so one of the ways that it's done that is really empathizing with mothers who have children with epilepsy and they experience that because that's a unique relationship and a unique sense of protection and helplessness that I saw with my mom and I've seen with various other people's that I know who have kids who have epilepsy is like that's a very, very hard thing.
Absolutely.
And so one of the interesting insights is that each seizure, if you think about it not from your own perspective, where we kind of agree, like there are these character development, there are these aspects of character development that epilepsy kind of brings about in your own person. It also does that for other people who are caring for you. Like that was a really interesting realization where it was like, oh no, this is not just for you. This is for all of you. And
Totally.
the like love and care that can come from this is a good fruit.
Wow, it's just such a
Yeah.
holistic perspective
Yeah. Yep.
on it, and I think that's very, very cool. Like that, like the character development doesn't stop with the person with epilepsy.
Yeah.
It's
Yep.
kind of like a whole village. The village has character development now.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. And it's an opportunity to amplify love. I've seen it in my
100%.
kids. I've seen it in my wife. I've seen it in my parents.
Yeah, you mentioned how you feel like your kids are a little bit more involved in, your epilepsy. What do you mean by that?
They've been in environments where it's like you guys are kind of first responders. And
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
And so like that's a pretty serious experience. We talk about it a lot and we talk about it in these kind of ways where this is something that our family has to deal with and it's unique, but it's not like these types of experiences are not uncommon. And I think it's like a broad way or it's a starting point to facilitate good discussions with the older kids right now.
Sure.
Whereas with my 4-year-old, it's like he's not ready for the heavy stuff yet.
Sure.
So it's about
we don't
it's
need
about
to,
yeah, exactly. You don't need to get into the abstract with him. But it's about I think like calming his anxiety about it.
Yeah. Well, and I just wonder the ripple effect of this too, because now, like, almost with certainty, one of your kids at least will have a classmate with epilepsy
Hmm. Hmm.
at some point, or know someone with epilepsy, if not all of your kids aside from you. And what that, ripple effect of empathy now carries over to that person, who might
Yep.
not be receiving that from anyone
Yep.
else. But then it's like, oh, no, my dad has this. Don't worry. Like, I got
Yep.
you. Like it's almost like first responder training
Yeah.
for life in a weird way.
Yep.
Not to put that responsibility on your children, but I just think, like, I don't know, the way that you and your family are going about this seems to be very real and honest, but while also like really focusing on that development piece,
Mhm.
which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, and then the value of that ripple effect shouldn't be underestimated. It's
Mm-hmm.
very profound. It's
Mm-hmm.
very profound. And it's interesting. It's like we have a tendency to underestimate what vocalizing something can do. Like just share, like small words of affirmation, small words of encouragement go
Mm-hmm.
a long way. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and conversations that seem like they can really shape someone's experience and point them in a positive direction.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Hmm.
And you have been pretty open with your epilepsy, not just
Hmm.
with your family, but publicly as well, and doing epilepsy advocacy work. Um, and I'm just curious because, and not everyone does, and that's fine. I'm just curious as to what your reason was for being vocal, like you're
Mm.
saying.
Yeah. I think for me it was kind of a cumulative realization that epilepsy can be very isolating,
Mm,
and there's there are common experiences and then there are very unique experiences across the community. Um, but I think there's a natural inclination to deal with this privately. Um,
yeah.
and to me, it just became clear of the value of telling your story to the broader community, coupled with the hope overlay, we'll call it, is like
Mm,
that
yes, I love that.
is is
Yes.
it's a really valuable thing, particularly in a community that I think requires vocal advocates because it has the tendency to be isolating. Like the
Mm-hmm.
nature of epilepsy where it just comes and goes and it's kind of invisible
Yeah.
is like you can deal with it privately, but that's a lot to bear. And so
Mm,
when you spread the when you can identify common experiences, like other people going through the same thing,
mm-hmm.
and here's how they're doing it, there's value in seeing different examples and hearing different experiences. um,
Totally.
that
Totally. And
has momentum.
finding that validation,
Mhm.
even if it's a different experience, just like
Yep.
that validation can be so powerful
Yep.
about, we're all going through it. I am so appreciative for you being here. And I really appreciate just your vulnerability and your insights. Like, holy shit, I feel like this is a very like sort of zen, very like I love this conversation. But before we wrap up, I'm going to ask you 3 questions that have
Yep.
nothing to do with what we've been talking about.
Okay.
First question is, what's your favorite color?
Can I pick two?
Of course.
Navy and gold.
Are you a Notre
I
Dame
like the
fan?
I like the combination. No, I
Oh,
just like
okay.
just have
It's a
aesthetic
beautiful combo.
tendencies. Yeah.
Yes, it's a beautiful combo. I love that.
Yep.
Number 2, if you had like just magically more free time to do whatever you wanted, what would you do?
Roast coffee.
What?
So
Tell me more.
so this is something that I have been doing in my free time is I've gone down a complete rabbit hole of roasting coffee. And
Was this like something you got into in the pandemic, or is this just like I
Yeah,
just love
kind of.
coffee.
Yeah. No,
Okay.
it was not necessarily like a pandemic hobby, but it was but I started kind of pursuing this more seriously a couple years ago, and we built our own roaster in our garage, and we've been
So
like
cool.
experimenting. Yeah, it's been so fun. And we've been experimenting, and we've got like really good coffee now, and we're trying to like build a little business on the side. And
Well, consider me
um,
a customer. I
yeah,
am
there you
obsessed
go.
with coffee. I
There you
love
go.
coffee. Yeah, I'll be buying
I'll
your
send you
coffee.
some. It's good.
Oh, that
It's
would be
good. It's
awesome.
it's shockingly good. So if I had more time, I would do more of that.
Okay. Awesome. That's so cool.
Yep.
And then the last question is, what does it mean to you to be a friend?
What it means to be a friend is to actively will the good of another person. That I think is like it's the definition of love in some way. So I would say that.
Wow, that's really beautiful. Well, this has been awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat and also just be the epilepsy advocate that you are, you know?
Same,
Yeah,
same.
it's just speaking your truth, man. You're doing a lot of good.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Likewise.
and I hope you get some sleep with those 5 kiddos.
That is a challenge, but
I
but
bet.
we do a good job protecting as much sleep as I can get. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
That's great. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, good to chat. Good to
Yes.
chat.